Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Chester Elton. I'm here with my dear friend and co-author for over 20 years now, Adrian Gostick. You can tell it's Adrian because that's the name in the box. Wait,
Ah.
yeah.
Hey everybody, we're delighted to be with you live on LinkedIn today. It's one day after the launch of our book Anxiety at Work. And Chester, we just heard from our publisher that they are now on the third reprint of Anxiety at Work.
I know.
It's been out a day.
Yeah, it's been out one day and we're going to the third reprint. And that's just from our families buying the books. Yeah. So
Well, you've got a big family. Yeah, it's true.
yeah. And listen, we really want to thank so many of you that pre-ordered the book and ordered them for your organizations and so on. You know, we're very passionate about this, removing the stigma from discussing wellness and anxiety in the workplace. And just can't thank you enough. We've had all kinds of letters, I'm dating myself, the emails and on all the ways you've connected with us.
Telegrams, lots of stuff coming in.
Morse code. It's been great. That really your support for this work. It's really been heartwarming, hasn't it, Adrian?
It really has. And on a serious note, we really do appreciate everybody's support and buying a book or just telling people about some of the ideas. It really is important that we do start addressing anxiety at work and more importantly, the resilience ideas within the book that can help people recover from this.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I love the people that tune into our StreamYard. The first person to chime in is Delise Simmons. She is a force of nature. Yeah. Follow her work. She's amazing. She's down there in Texas and she is all Texas, baby. She is, you want a definition of Texan, it's Delise. And Delise, we're delighted that you're joining us today and the wonderful work you do in culture. Thanks for chiming in from all over. We've got Alper Toper, our friend Alper Toper from Istanbul. We've got an international audience. How fun is all of this? Beth Maurer, appreciate you tuning in. Hey, let's jump into this because we've got these, 8 strategies of how you. Well, there's our picture. That's me on the left, Adrian on the right. So we can on our book. These 8 resilience strategies, and today we want to talk about strategy number 5. Help your people find their voice. So important, isn't it, Adrian, that particularly when you're going through any kind of transition, crisis, whether it's a pandemic or a merger acquisition, you're opening a new market, that people feel like their voices are heard, because when they don't, you get that feeling of isolation and being alone, and anxiety just goes up, doesn't it?
Exactly right. And what we heard, we conducted dozens of interviews for our book, Anxiety at Work. And what especially younger people told us is, I'm afraid of raising my voice because I don't want to lose my job. So why take a risk? Why throw ideas out there? Why take a risk? Why try something new? That's not helping anybody, is it? If we can't have good debate and good idea sharing within our teams.
So there's a difference, right, between conflict and healthy debate. And it's really interesting because, conflict in the name is anxiety driven, right? Very few people seek out conflict, right? We're kind of conflict avoiders for the most part. And so again, when you're talking about younger employees, when I'm still trying to find my way through the organization, I'm not looking for conflict. I'm looking at what are the rules of the road? How do I get along? And you want to have that healthy debate because you want that give and take. You want to make the product better. You want to make your services better. And nobody gets it right out of the box. So, Adrian, we talk about leaders modeling the right behavior. Expound on that a little bit. How can the leader make sure that it's safe, particularly for younger employees, to speak up in the workplace?
It's such a good point, because this does come back to the leader making it safe to have debate. And we're going to talk in a minute about what one leader did to create ground rules for debate. So one of the things you can do is, first off, to be very respectful of ideas. A great leader we've worked with for many years, Mark Beck, who at the time we started working was like the number 3 guy for Danaher, 70,000 employee manufacturing company. And one of the things that Mark would say is, you've got to encourage debate. You go around the table, you make sure people have a voice, and they're going to argue out things. And at the end, he says, one of the things you should do is say, look, this has been just such a terrific debate. Smart people could go either way. Thank you so much for your ideas. I feel like we need to go this way because of this. But that way, he says, people feel safe next time bringing you ideas because they know they're going to be respectfully listened to, even if they don't get accepted.
Exactly. At least I had a chance to make my case. Delise makes a great comment where she says, "I like the difference between using your voice versus raising your voice." Sometimes we think, "Oh, if I just talk loud enough and fast enough, right, I'll win people over." And yet, I love that. Use your voice. Use your reason. Well, it's all about looking at things a little differently, right? And you can't be afraid of that. We've got this great little video from Neil deGrasse Tyson that talks about using simple things to challenge people to look at things differently. Now, not only good business advice here, Adrian, good parenting advice.
Really is. Here we go.
Listen for it. Here we go.
I'm often asked by parents, what advice can I give them to help get kids interested in science? And I have only one bit of advice. Get out of their way. Kids are born curious, period. I don't care about your economic background. I don't care what town you're born in, what city, what country. If you're a child, you are curious about your environment. You're overturning rocks. You're plucking leaves off of trees and petals off of flowers and looking inside. And you're doing things that create disorder in the lives of the adults around you. And so then what do adults do? They say, don't pluck the petals off the flowers. I just spent money on that. Don't play with the egg. It might break. Don't. Everything is a don't. We spend the first year teaching them to walk and talk, and the rest of their lives telling them to shut up and sit down. So you get out of their way. And you put things in their midst that help them explore. Help them explore. Why don't you get a pair of binoculars? Just leave it there one day. Watch them pick it up and watch them look around. They'll do all kinds of things with it. For me, at age 11, I had a pair of binoculars and I looked up to the moon. And the moon wasn't just bigger, it was better.
I love that. Not just bigger, but better. I love the engagement in the chat that's going on, Adrian. Christine chimed in. She just ordered the book. Can't wait to read it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, it's aloha from Hawaii. Love that, And we've got Uli just chimed in from Frankfurt, Germany. It's, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you helping us get the word out about removing this stigma. This is a health issue. It's not a mental health issue. It's a health issue. And we need to take that stigma away. Well, talking about, having your voice heard, Bell Helicopter is one of our favorite case studies, isn't it, Adrian? Walk us through it, because they really figured it out because they had to.
Yeah, Bell Helicopter, if you're not familiar with them, 70-year-old company that really is best known for making the Huey helicopters of the Vietnam War. In fact, when Mitch Schneider took over as CEO in 2015, there was still a Huey in the front lobby. They were so proud of this. And he said, look, it's something to be proud of that we contributed to the history of helicopters. We need to be the future of helicopters. He says, I called a lot of my clients, and when I took over as CEO, and they told me, Mitch, your Bell Helicopter is very safe, reliable, but not particularly exciting. We're not going to put our high-end customers in one of your choppers. They're really kind of used for more industrial. So he says we were losing market share. In fact, when I joined the company as a junior engineer 25 years ago, he said we had 15,000 employees. By the time that he took over as CEO, they had 7,000 employees. They'd seen this reduction in their market share. So he says, I walked through my aerospace engineering team. These are my designers, my engineers who are creating new designs. And he says, pretty much to a person, they looked like everybody else. They're all kind of male, all white, all wore khaki pants, check shirts, and a pocket protector with their pens in it. He says it was like looking at a bunch of clones. And he says, I didn't, don't want to be disparaging them because they were all really good at what they did, but we certainly weren't getting new, fresh ideas. So he says, I went out and I hired some new people. I started looking for designers. I found one designer who'd worked in Hollywood, designing spaceships for Battlestar Galactica and all these different movies. This is Mitch, by the way. He says, I found another, somebody who'd worked in video game design, who showed up first day in Birkenstocks and shorts, did not go well, right? He says, we started mixing the engineers and these outside designers with all these cool ideas. And he says it just didn't go well. The designers would throw out an idea. What if we made the wings look like this? And the engineers would say, nope. They'd say, well, can you give me a little more? Won't fly. And he says it was just awful. Everything that they threw out just got shot down. People were not able to have a voice. Nobody was listening to anybody else. And even the designers, these outside folks thought they knew it all. The engineers thought they knew it all. Nobody was listening. So he says, I gathered my team together. And he says, first off, we're going to rename the aerospace engineering team the innovations team. That's your new name. Get used to it. And he says, we're going to move everybody together. You are all going to sit together. There's no longer going to be engineering and design. We're all going to mix everybody together. And he says, secondly, we're going to have ground rules. This is how we're going to operate in every meeting. He says, first off, everybody and anybody can ask questions or make suggestions without ever fearing that they're going to look stupid. There is no dumb idea. It is the end of somebody's career if you start making fun of somebody. He says, that's how serious this is. He says, secondly, we're going to be respectfully challenging of each other's ideas, but never acting negative. So you challenge the idea, that's okay, but not the person. That's off limits, in front or behind the person, back, right? He says, we're going to listen carefully. We're going to try and understand where the person's coming from and dig deeper on their idea. We will ask for clarification if needed. And debates are an opportunity to find the best idea, learn from each other, and be enlightened, not to ram home your goals. He said, in fact, he says, for the next month, if somebody suggests an idea, I want you to find a way to use some part of that idea. And he says, that became tough. He says, so we set to work. He says, there were times that I could hear them getting heated with each other and arguing with each other. But then I would see them an hour later in the cafeteria having lunch together. He says that fire in the trenches brought them closer together. He says, and pretty soon it became kind of hard to know who were the designers and who were the engineers. They were just ideas flowing. He says, I'm sitting in a meeting one day, and he says it was kind of a tipping point because one of the designers that I'd brought in his black turtleneck, throws out this crazy idea. And one of the engineers goes, instead of what I was expecting, he goes, nope, that won't fly. He said, you know what? That just might work. And it became the bud of this amazing idea that we started to develop. Well, not long ago, Mitch, who brought us in to work with them a couple of years ago, he sent us this email, and it was a link to an industry article that had just reviewed the latest helicopter coming off the line. And the industry article's headline was, what if Lamborghini and Tesla designed a helicopter? Was he proud of that or what? Yeah. And now remember, this is the company that designed this. This is their first design coming out of that innovations team. It's called the FCX 001. And he says, we are building plants now because we have more demand than we could possibly fill. And remember, this is just our first innovation. It's amazing what happens, right? When you actually listen to the people and make sure everybody has a voice, right, Jess?
Yeah, that when you get everybody thinking about a problem, it's a lot easier to solve that if you're trying to sit in the corner and do it by yourself, right? There's no question about it.
Yeah, together we can be a genius. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to welcome Gasper Moo. He says, Buenas tardes a todos. That's my best accent. Okay, so if I didn't do it right, Gasper, you got to forgive me. But
yeah,
this really sums it up, and I think it's so important. It's a necessary part of change. Of course, you have to debate. Of course, you have to challenge the status quo. Bell helicopters can't make Huey helicopters forever. That's not gonna fly. Pardon the pun.
I like that.
But that open culture, fixing conflict. And Gasper, by the way, is from Yucatan, Mexico. So thanks for joining.
Welcome, to our friends from Mexico joining. And this is exactly right, Jess. Is that so many people with anxiety flee, and you'll notice the conflict averse within your team. They don't like it. We've got to bring them out of that a little bit. Now, one of the ways that you do this is really helping address things more directly, more on the nose. Sometimes we come to things from a roundabout point of view. Well, Susan, one of our goals here is teamwork. And immediately bells start going, well, what have I done? Versus, you addressed an issue, and we talk about this in anxiety at work. It's a very simple formula. You address issues directly up front. Don't try and beat around the bush. I think you called on one of my clients, Susan. That's going against our value. Then it's going, our value is collaboration and teamwork. I didn't know about this. So what can we do together to work on a solution? Now, it doesn't mean this is all magically going to make everybody, work together better, but it's just a very simple way of addressing tough issues. Address the issue directly. Talk about the value that's important to your company, one of your core values, and then together work on solutions. You may have to back off from this and may have to keep coming back to it a few times or even get outside help. But just isn't this kind of one of the simple ways that we begin talking about tough issues with people who may be a little reticent?
Yeah, I love when you have the ground rules and everybody buys in. I love that one. He says we can laugh, but not at other people's expense. That's you're the only one that thinks that's funny, right?
Yeah.
And I love the ground rules. It gives you that freedom, right? Well, it leads us into assume positive intent. We did a deep dive on this in our last book, Leading with Gratitude, and we were able to get to know Indira Nooyi, the retired chairman and CEO of Pepsi. Just such a delightful person. She just thinks positively about, life in general, and also her people. I love, she says, when you assume positive intent, the approach to the problem and everything is different. It's about solving the problem. It's about valuing people's effort. When you go negative, everything gets bad. You vilify people, you get angry, you get annoyed. How could you do this to me? And what happens is people, if they make a mistake, they do what, right? And they hide it.
Yeah.
Exactly what you don't want to have happen. Now, as we've only got 30 minutes with you, we're about halfway through. So if you've got questions for us, please put it in the chat box. Or if you've got experiences you want to share, put it in the chat box, because we've got a great story about how one leader really did have to figure out this whole assume positive intent. Lynn Carnes is her name. And she's a risk management, her previous job, she was a risk management analyst for a bank. So basically her job was to find everything that was going wrong, eliminate risk. She later goes out and becomes a coach and goes out on her own. And she said, it was really interesting. I never assumed positive intent, even when I was managing a team, right? We had this initiative, assume positive intent. And I'd always say, well, I'll tell you what, rather than assume positive intent, why don't you just do what I tell you to do? Let's start with that, right? She said it was really about me just getting stuff done and checking the boxes. Well, she starts to travel quite a bit. She gets all the privileges of a frequent traveler, expert traveler. You don't have to take off your shoes. You're in the fast line. And she says, I'm at the airport. And all of a sudden in the expert line, it kind of stops dead, which is unusual because expert travelers know how to just keep the line moving, right? She looks to the front of the line and she sees a woman with a baby, a big diaper bag and a stroller. And she goes, how did she get into, listen for it, my line? Doesn't she realize I've got important things to do and she doesn't belong here? How could she do this to me, right? Well, then there was that moment, that aha moment, right? Where she says, in order for this woman to kind of keep the line moving and not hold everybody up, instead of using just the one hand, she puts her baby down on the floor to use two hands. She said, the most precious thing in her life, she puts on this filthy airport floor. That's when I realized that she wasn't doing anything to me. She was just trying to get to her gate like everybody else. So I asked somebody to watch my bags, go to the front of the line and said, how can I help? Picked up her baby, thought the least I can do is get her baby off the dirty floor and help her get through the line. She goes, that was my moment. Now, your moment might be something different. I got to tell you, when you start to assume positive intent, this idea that you're doing it, as Lynn said, to protect yourself from all the negativity, to keep yourself safe, it's exactly the opposite. People won't come to you for advice. People will hide their mistakes. When you assume positive intent, it's out in the open. Voices are heard, right? And problems get solved. Well, couple of ideas right there about the big idea. Take a screenshot of this. Generally speaking, we assume positive intent because we haven't got enough information. Pick up the phone. Go see him if you can. Get more information. Gather the facts before you make any jump to conclusion, right? Take a forward-looking approach. What did we learn? How can we make this better? How can we avoid doing this again next time? And then pay close attention to that passive-aggressive stuff, right? Well, that's Adrian. I guess that's what we've come to expect from Adrian in a case like this, right? Well, it's interesting. A couple of questions. Why don't we take a break here just really quick, Adrian?
Good.
We've got Alper Toper from beautiful Istanbul. He says, what would you suggest to a leader who manages remotely to do first thing in the morning?
No, it's a great question, Alper. One of the things that we're hearing from our remote managers who are doing this very well, and it doesn't have to be every day, but for certainly on the Monday morning, it's the Monday morning check-in. Hey, Alper, what have you got work going this week? Great. Let's prioritize those. Let's figure out, which ones are most important to the team. Let's kind of put them in an order, and let's see which ones maybe have to be bumped off if other things come in. You think about your week being all these boxes on the truck, and if something new comes on, a box has to go off. But people need help organizing that way. So I would say at least once a week, you are helping your people prioritize. Doesn't matter how senior they are. And the other thing daily that we're hearing with remote employees is that managers are checking in and saying, how are you doing today? Because today is probably different than yesterday. Maybe somebody is sick. Maybe you're worrying about, kids doing remote schooling. Maybe there's something going on. But it's that communication that you're trying to do every day, right, Chess?
Yeah, I think Monday morning rituals are really important. We've all had the jobs where Sunday night, right around 5:30, 6 o'clock, we start to get that pit in our stomach. We got to go back to work if we don't have something positive to look forward to, right? And that's what's really interesting when you say, what can we do Monday morning to kick things off that people will look forward to coming into the workplace? Maybe it's just a fun recap of the weekend. Maybe it's a quick health check-in. Maybe it's a little bit of recognition. Say, hey, I got the numbers from last week, and call out a couple of things. There's always good things going on. Find 2 or 3 good things. Call out a couple of people. Make people look forward to coming to work first thing in the morning. Well, we got a couple of more minutes left here, Adrian, so let's make good use of it. You're up.
Yeah. Let me kind of give you now we've been talking about ways to help people find their voice, making them feel more emotionally safe, like this idea of leaders and all of us assuming positive intent. We've talked about making it safe to have a voice and ground rules like a Bell helicopter. One of the other things, and I just see somebody putting the Sunday night crazies. Yeah. This is exactly what happened with this email string or this text string here. Young person that when we were writing the book, Anxiety at Work, he shows us this. He says, look at this. I got this from my boss on a Friday night. I'm there at home and I get this thing that says, got your report, period. And we went, okay. He goes, look. And so he says, I type back, is everything okay with it? He says, I redid the report like 3 times that weekend. And we're not really following because we're oldies. We don't really get what's going on, just like this manager didn't. So the manager responds, this is still Friday night, saying, haven't dug in too much yet. Let's talk Monday, ... So, being the clueless guys we are, we went, okay, now you got to help us out here. He says, actually, it was our co-author, Anthony Gostick, my son, who's 25, who's a genetics researcher. He's a really smart young man, but he's in this age group. And he goes, oh my gosh, this is terrible. He says, first off, the boss says, got the report, period. Now, in texting, period means end of discussion. Don't need to talk anymore. So he says, so that's one problem. It's also, where's the thank you? He says, there's just no gratitude, right? The boss, or, that's why he says everything okay. The boss not picking up on the clues at all says, well, I haven't dug in yet. Talk more Monday, ... So Anthony explains to us, this is extremely ominous. It's really scary. So we actually encouraged the employee to go talk to the boss, and he did. And he says, the boss said, I had no idea it was coming across this way. So a little awareness can be really powerful. If we want our people to speak up and not be afraid, sometimes you have to be aware of those little things. Now, Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Well, I always laugh when we tell this story because, let's talk Monday, ... We read it as ... He read it
Yeah.
as ... Like this ominous music right before the guy comes in with the chainsaw and kills everybody.
Exactly right. Yeah. So let me tell you one quick story here. This is fantastic. So Liz Wiseman is now a famous author, and we interviewed her for the book, actually. At the time this happened to her, Liz was a senior executive with Oracle. So very important person, huge corporation. And her daughter wanted her to come and help out in the third grade. So she goes, okay, fine. So she looks at all the things she could volunteer, and she sees great books debate leader. So she goes, I could do that. I mean, I was an English major in college. I can lead the great books debate. So she signs up for it, and the teacher calls her and says, this is great. Thank you for doing this. Training is next week. And she goes, I don't think you understand. I'm an executive at Oracle. I lead a team of dozens of people. I have a college degree in English. She goes, we don't care. You need to go to the training. And she says, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in learning how to lead a team. She goes, first thing they taught me was this, is that a leader asks the question, but never answers it. And it was brilliant. She says, so I learned you go around and you don't put your voice into the discussion. Second thing she says that I learned in a debate is that you ask for evidence. So if one of the kids would raise and say, well, I think Jack went up the beanstalk because he's greedy, she'd go, great, give me proof. And the little kids would sit there terrified at first, but they kind of started getting, and they would go, okay, well, on page 18, he stole the golden harp. So that shows that he's greedy. She goes, excellent. And as they started getting reinforcement for finding proof and evidence, their arguments got better and better. And she says, the last one was really simple. She says, but it's something we forget. She says, have a chart with everybody's name on it. She says, because you'll think you can do this, but you can't. So you tick every time somebody's spoken. And she'll go, Marcus, we've heard from you a couple of times now. Robert, you haven't said anything yet so far. What do you think? And she says, it was remarkable. Just these simple little things. She says, I took this back to Oracle. And she says, immediately, I was leading better debates, better discussions where everybody was speaking up, but they were defending their positions. Everybody was involved, and it was very positive. And so simple little ideas from kids that can really help us. So again, we want to thank you, right, Jess, for tuning in today.
Absolutely. We've put up a wonderful book site with a lot of free offers and whatnot and background at anxietyatworkbook.com. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're constantly posting new information there. We've got a wonderful newsletter. We've got a great article coming out Friday about how grateful we are to have an ally at work that helps reduce anxiety. We'd love you to tune in and chime in and give us your opinions there. Again, I'll tell you, we had so much fun yesterday launching our book on May the 4th be with you. And here we are on Cinco de Mayo, having all this fun with all you folks that have chimed in to learn about this work. We're passionate about it for a lot of reasons. Healthy workplaces ripple into healthy lives. And you just can't have a healthy life if you're suffering from anxiety at work. It doesn't work. So these strategies and the things we're talking about, we've researched them. We've got the case studies. We've got the proof. See, there's my book club here. Give me the evidence. And it works. It really does work. We're wanting to create better cultures, create better workplaces. We can't do it alone. We can do it as a group. And so if you'll please join us in this movement to make work a little less anxious, a little more healthy, so that the ripple effect is we can be a little more happier at home, a little less anxious at home. We'd sure appreciate your help.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Have a stress-free day. Take care and be well. See ya.
Bye-bye.